We're going to see who in the entire game of UFC 5 Belal Muhammad can finish in a fight. Belal, remember the name Muhammad, might be the safest man in the UFC you can be locked in a cage with. Contrary to his nickname, he is known for having forgettable fights. He's had 18 fights in the UFC and has only finished 3 of them, 2 by TKO and 1 by submission, which might explain why it took him so long in the first place to get a title shot. Of those 3 finishes, 2 of them happened in Abu Dhabi. Coincidence? I think not. In Belal's 10th fight, he submitted Takashi Sato, who was fighting for his 2nd time in his career outside of Japan. And in his most recent finish, he had a questionable TKO against Sean Brady while he was still standing with less than 15 seconds left in the round. So we're going to see how this impressive resume can stack up against every man in the UFC, regardless of weight class. I took a look at Belal's in-game stats, and don't let the numbers deceive you. Every striking stat he has is at 3.5 stars, besides punching power, which is at 3 stars. That's about as low as it gets in UFC 5. I thought about letting Belal fight everyone under normal MMA rules, and I even tried it out for a bit. That of course left me with nothing but boring decision fights over and over, so I decided instead he'll be fighting everyone with ground game disabled. What could go wrong? Well, Belal's going to be starting from the heavyweight division and working his way down, so I'll show you. I was keeping track of every accomplishment Belal crossed off, and his first blood drawn on an opponent came from kicking Curtis Blades in the face. Blades didn't appreciate that very much. I didn't expect Belal to do too much damage against these heavyweights, and he did a good job proving me right about that. He got knocked out by everyone from Cormier to Walt Harris before doing anything noteworthy besides having near-death experiences. He did actual damage to an opponent against John Jones by checking a few kicks, which is probably his safest bet when it comes to getting a finish in this division. He got another stun against Stipe Miocic that didn't result in anything other than Belal forcefully doing the splits. Belal finished the heavyweight division by going 0-28 and being knocked out in every single fight. That was to be expected, but hopefully by dropping a weight division or 4, he can really start to show that he can stick and move. He started off his lightweight campaign against Israel Adesanya, which went about as expected. He was knocked out again by Alvian Ankalaev, but out of nowhere, Belal was able to stay conscious against a roidless Vitor Belfort. Yeah, Belal got the crap beat out of him and lost 30-26, but above all else, this man loves a good decision, so that's a huge moral victory for him. Physically, that didn't help him in the next 3 fights.
Person like this in front of you. That is so good. Oh!
He was given a softball against 45-year-old Mark Coleman, who like himself would rather be on the mat getting to know each other. That allowed Belal to get his first ever knockdown, and he got another one late in the 2nd round. He was looking like he could actually win this fight, but then he defended a punch with his chin. Paul Craig kept him in check in his next fight and turned him into a lawn chair. Belal continued to get knocked out time and time again by the light heavyweights, but Jamal Hill took him out with leg kicks, so we're gonna have to toss that one up as a win. Every ragdoll animation he gets after being knocked out is pretty bad, but it was Chuck Liddell that put him in a pose so bad that Belal will never be allowed back in his ancestral country. But Belal Muhammad finally found himself on the winning side of things thanks to none other than Tito Ortiz. Somehow these fights have turned Belal into a kickboxing expert. He continued to land his now patented head kick, which knocked down Tito multiple times. Then he gave Tito a vicious combo followed by another head kick for the knockout. 50 fights ago, this man didn't even know what combos were, but I guess UFC 5 got sick of seeing the poor bastard keep losing. And how does Belal get to follow this new high of momentum? He has to fight Alex Pereira, the hardest hitting man on the planet.
Ooh, what a punch.
Belal definitely had a solid losing streak growing again, but he kept showing glimpses of hope here and there. He had Roundtree on the ropes, he just knocked him down, he's landing punches, and he's gone. Shogun had him on his back with his legs spread, sus. OSP had to knock Belal out 3 times just to get him to quit, so I guess he's starting to improve his chin strength. Saki turned him into a propelled object, but Glover might have taken the cake by sending him rolling on a flat surface. But Belal Muhammad has had enough of this 205 weight class embarrassing him. No, there's nothing beeping in his shorts yet. He was out for blood against 6'6" Johnny Walker. After 2 rounds, he was up 20-18 after multiple knockdowns and stuns. He was catching Johnny in the middle of some of his bold fighting moves. but Johnny came back with an axe kick that landed flush and knocked Belal out face first. And to finish the light heavyweight division, Chris Weidman was almost taken out by a doctor stoppage in the third, but he had enough time to finish the job. And Dana White himself held this man back in his career once again, but with his own hands. So far, Belal has gone 1-63, with 62 of those losses being by knockout. That's pretty bad, but considering the weight difference here, one win is ahead of schedule. And in his first fight at the middleweight division, he doubled his wins with a knockout against Akhmedov. He then dominates Brendan Allen and wins by unanimous decision. That's not the goal here, but he deserves to treat himself after being knocked out 62 times. Belal then went on a 13-fight knocked out losing streak. Chimaev had some fun breaking the rules against him. He knocked him down with a headbutt, then kicked him while he was down before knocking him out. Royce Gracie seemed like an equally as undangerous opponent on the feet, but even he proved to be too much for Belal after he kneed him in the nuts for a knockout. Anthony Hernandez was the man who broke the streak, even though he was winning this fight, but Belal might be on some gear by now, and I wouldn't blame him because he had some extra power on this left hook. But that ended up being all Belal had to show in the middleweight division. He did not win another fight from Kevin Holland to Robert Whittaker. Out of his 34 fights in this division, he won 3, with 2 by knockout. That brings his total fighting record so far to 4-94 with 3 finishes. From here on out, he'll be fighting at his own weight class and then proceeding to fight men that are way smaller than him. Belal got an easy start at welterweight with Ben Askren and he capitalized. But for his second fight, he had a rematch against Sean Brady and that didn't go so well. He got knocked out against Brown and Burns, but against Donald Cerrone, he did something that only a man of his talents is capable of. Somehow, it was scored a unanimous draw. He went 2-2 in his next 4 fights with knockouts over Chiesa and Covington. A couple fights later, he had another victory against Dos Anjos. We had a preview of the championship coming up, but Leon Edwards had no problem with this man on the feet. Ferguson even got a knockout against him, so maybe that's the retirement fight he's been looking for after all. Then Belal had his biggest winning streak so far with a decision victory over Mickey Gall and knockout victories over Hendricks and Hughes. But he more than made up for that success by following it with a 7-fight losing streak, which included my personal favorite knockout of his with no body punches thrown. He blocked the body and kindly leaned into Jing Liang's overhand right. From here, he had some back and forth results, but somehow he was able to knock out Conor McGregor of all people. And after that win, he went 2-14 in his own division with wins over Gunnar Nelson and Anthony Pettis. So in the one fair weight class, he went 12-31 with 10 finishes, which obviously isn't great, but it's especially bad when you realize this guy might be the world champion a month from now. They might need to roll out a new fighter update in that case. He's moving on to lightweight, so he's fighting men 15 pounds lighter than him. Should be a walk in the park, except he got knocked out in his first 2 fights. He had his first lightweight victory against Dariush with a second left in the round. And honestly, after seeing all of his fights in this division, given his weight advantage and the fact that ground game is turned off, this is where he belongs. Every fight looked pretty even and it could have gone either way, but generally if he was faced with a good striker, you could expect him to get sent flying and end up asleep. But if it were someone who was a subpar fighter, especially on the feet, he had a fair chance of getting some get back. Although even with his 15-pound weight advantage and his best performances so far, he went 14-18, including 1 decision victory. So even in this division, he's still not a real threat on the feet and still can't maintain a winning record. But surely at featherweight, with a 25-pound weight advantage, he should be knocking out every little man I put in front of him. Well, his first matchup was Jose Aldo. Belal tried, but failed to knock him out. So this man still can't be known as a finisher in this division. He finished Arnold Allen and Amir Khani, but had to go to a decision with Asunkao, who is one of the lowest rated fighters in this division. And Bektic did the unexpected and became the first featherweight man to knock out Belal. Bruce Leroy proved it wasn't a fluke and knocked out Belal in the following fight. Belal showed some promise with a 5-fight winning streak afterwards, but the fact that he's having close fights with guys that are 25 pounds lighter than him is a bit sad. He might have had his best knockout so far when he sent a knee into an already unconscious Doo Ho Choi. But for the rest of the division, he had no more decisions, which is always a step in the right direction. But he was beaten by Ige, Magomed Sharipov, Ortega, and Sterling. So in the featherweight division, he had a positive winning percentage for the first time. Just a reminder though, Belal is a welterweight. He won 19 of his 25 fights with all but 2 victories by knockout. Belal only has 2 more divisions remaining, and now this just becomes a matter of how small of a man can either not be knocked out by Belal or even go as far as to knock Belal out themselves. The 135ers had a rough start with Belal knocking out his first 5 opponents, but 5'3", 135 pounds John Dodson wouldn't go away. He didn't have much offense going for him, but he could take whatever Belal was throwing at him, and he made it to a decision. He lost that decision 30-27, but this anthill of a man just survived 15 minutes of irritation with Remember the Name. And things got worse for Belal in this division because soon after, Rob Font put this man to sleep. Font was stunned deep in the third, but not even 20 seconds later, he had a chance to test Belal's chin, making him the first 135er to knock him out. And Belal is starting a losing streak in the Bantamweight division because prime Cody Garbrandt is back. He sent a kick up the middle and Belal's chin failed him once again with only 46 seconds left in the fight. Cody will be the very last man to succeed at knocking Belal out, but he won't be the last to beat him. I knew Marlon Vera could take everything Belal could throw at him, even with his hands tied behind his back, but he came back at him with some offense of his own. And with some late stuns and knockdowns, he beat Belal at his own game and won by unanimous decision. Belal won his last 2 bantamweight fights, but not by a wide margin. He'll finish the bantamweight division with an 18-3 record with 17 finishes. So even with a 35-pound weight advantage, I'm not even sure it's safe to say he'd be the champion of this division under the stand and bang rules. However, I can assure you this man would dominate the 125ers, and it's about damn time. He only had 13 opponents, but he made short work of them and swept the division with knockouts. In total, Belal had 80 victories, 151 losses, and 1 draw with 73 knockouts against every fighter in UFC 5. His best and biggest victory was 6'2", 205-pound Tito Ortiz, and the smallest man to defeat him was 5'7", 135 pounds Cody Garbrandt. All in all, this went a little bit better than expected, but Belal is still ass on his feet. Just for a comparison, here is a graph of when I did this same concept but with Alex Pereira. Red means they were knocked out, green means they did the knocking out. You might notice there's a slight difference here, but who knows, maybe I'll jinx him and he'll actually win by knockout next month. So if this video hits 5,000 likes before then, I'll be betting $100 on him winning inside the distance. But thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one.